tightening restrictions. House Republicans push to block funds from Obamacare for abortions.
Energetic kids leading the March for Life this year. I'm Jason Calvi. I'll introduce you to them coming up.
Marching on. Growing for more than 40 years, we look at the March for Life's rich history. And Pajama Party, a giant pro-life campout at Catholic University of America. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, January 22nd, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Pro-life advocates surge through the streets of our nation's capital. Today's March for Life coincides with a House vote to permanently bar federal dollars from funding abortion. We have team coverage from the Supreme Court tonight, beginning with Susanne LaFrankie.
Brian, House Republicans intentionally decided to vote for pro-life legislation to coincide with today's March for Life. However, internal bickering forced them to shelve a much more significant pro-life bill. As thousands of exuberant pro-life supporters gathered on the National Mall, the House voted along party lines to permanently bar federal funds for any abortion coverage.
The yeas are 242 and the nays are 179.
Democrats accused the GOP of pandering to pro-life constituents, exploiting the March for Life, while Republicans argued for the protection of all life.
It's an assault on women's health and freedom.
All human life is worth protecting.
The vote came after an embarrassing internal squabble abruptly led the GOP leadership to abandon another bill that would stop abortions after 20 weeks. Some GOP lawmakers objected that the rape and incest exemptions covered only women who reported the crime. Today's bill also blocks tax credits for those buying abortion coverage under President Obama's health care law.
It would end our forced complicity, our funding of abortion.
Representative Kathy McMorris Rodgers of Washington is the highest-ranking woman in the House. The pro-life lawmaker promises the 20-week ban bill will come up for a vote.
We're going to get it done. We had hoped our goal was to get it done today, but we are committed to working through the language and getting it on the House of Representatives floor as soon as possible.
Representative Trent Franks of Arizona, co-sponsor of the bill, is disappointed over the delay, but guarantees House Republicans will reach a compromise.
No matter how the abortion industry would orchestrate deceptive what-ifs or twisted words or gotchas, this bill fundamentally is an effort to protect pain-capable babies and their mothers from this atrocity.
President Obama blasted House Republicans, saying that this bill would intrude on women's reproductive freedom. However, thousands of women at today's march disagree with that notion. Jason Calvi, you were at the march as well.
Suzanne, so many of them. We don't have the total number, but in years past, estimates have been hundreds of thousands marching for life here in Washington, D.C. And again this year, they've made their voices heard. On a mission for those without a voice.
A human being starts at conception.
A movement of hundreds of thousands, led by high schoolers.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Words cannot describe how excited we are.
Students from Shanley High School in Fargo, North Dakota are carrying the banner this year.
This was kind of my way to actually be active in the pro-life movement.
They're leading the March for Life, walking from the National Mall, past the Capitol, and ending at the U.S. Supreme Court. People of all ages, but mostly the young.
It's very exciting. It's a wonderful occasion, and it's very inspiring to see how many of our young people have turned out to be witnesses of the gospel of life.
The Fargo students were more than excited to learn they'd be the ones leading the march.
And everyone went nuts, just jumped up, cheering, shouting along with myself. It was just incredible.
They have many reasons to be here today.
I've had some abortions in the family, and I've seen how it affects people, and it can really tear some people apart.
We, as the pro-life generation, have been introduced to all of the science, and we know the real facts and the actual truth.
With them at the front, the pro-life movement marches on.
And equal justice under law is emblazoned on the Supreme Court building where the march ends each year. Like this year, the march usually happens today on the anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision that legalized abortion across the country. Brian?
Thank you, Jason and Suzanne. Wyatt Goolsby is also there. He will join us shortly. Today's march was peaceful, but at least 8 protesters were arrested at the Supreme Court building for trying to block March for Life participants. The protests and the arrests held up some marchers for more than half an hour. Even in handcuffs, they continued yelling anti-life chants. Some were dressed in white jumpsuits that appeared to be splattered with blood. After ignoring 3 warnings, the protesters were hauled off by U.S. Capitol Police. Marchers responded with hymns and prayer. Continuing our precious gift coverage, special coverage of the March for Life 2015. We're blessed to have Jeanne Monahan Mancini, president of the March for Life. Jeanne's another march is history. What's your assessment?
It was an incredible day, very enthusiastic. Hard to keep the crowds under control. They were so excited to be there.
The sun was out. The crowds were huge. And it was kind of it was a joyful moment in a sense after the Congress last night decided not to take on that pro-life bill. What's your take on that?
Oh, we were so disappointed. It was a huge disappointment to hear that last night, and sort of the background behind it and everything. It was a real bummer. But that said, we were really pleased that they introduced no taxpayer funding for Abortion Act again and voted on it today, and that passed in the House. And we hear from leadership that they are committed to making this fetal pain bill happen in this Congress. So we're going to hold them to that.
That is the bill that would ban abortion after 20 weeks of pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So every life is a gift. What a beautiful theme. Expand on that just a little bit.
Well, there's lots of different things, but what we emphasized today in the rally in particular, Brian, is that your life is a gift. Everyone who is at the rally, their life is a gift, and in particular that we all have a role to play in building a culture of life. You are unique, unrepeatable, and there is a special mission. You are part of a bigger plan, and so that's what we really talked about today at the rally.
Is that something that we can carry through the year now into next year's march?
Yes, and the way that your viewers can do that is to text 99,000 the words "Give Life," because we're going to give different ideas about how to do that in your local community year-round from the March for Life.
Every life is a gift, and we thank you for the gift that you bring to March for Life.
Oh, thank you.
A great success again this year.
Thank you for covering it, Brian.
It was really a joy. Jeanne Monahan Mancini, president of March for Life. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. We'll return to March for Life coverage a little later, but Yemen's president has resigned, and that raises concerns about a possible collapse of the Arab world's poorest country. That could severely complicate U.S. efforts to combat the powerful al-Qaeda franchise in Yemen. Abed Rabo Mansouri Hadi submitted his resignation to Parliament under pressure from the Houthi rebels. He was a close U.S. ally in the fight against al-Qaeda in Yemen. The rebels had confined him to his home for the past couple of days. Yemeni law says that the parliament speaker should assume the presidency. However, Yemen's government also submitted its resignation today, so the rebels are effectively in control of the country. The European Central Bank announces a 60 billion euro stimulus program today. The bank will buy that amount in bonds each month, starting in March, hoping to undercut the deflation threatening to paralyze the Eurozone.
To a point, you can say that it has already worked. When you look at at currency variation and where the euro is at the moment.
The IMF chief speaking at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland today. The bank's main interest rate will remain at its current record low of 0.05%. President Obama won't meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when he comes to Washington in March. Netanyahu accepted an invitation from House Speaker John Boehner to address a joint session of Congress. It was issued without consultation with the White House, which later said Boehner didn't follow protocol. A White House spokesman says the president won't meet with Netanyahu because of the close proximity of Israeli elections. They say it's a long-standing practice for U.S. presidents not to meet with other heads of state that close to an election in their country. Amidst the increased buzz about 2016, Republicans Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney meet privately today. The two potential GOP presidential candidates are in Utah. They had planned to meet before Romney announced that he was considering a third run for the White House a couple weeks ago. An aide to former Governor Bush confirmed the meeting without providing details of what the two would discuss. President Obama meets for the first time with the wife of an American pastor imprisoned in Iran. Pastor Saeed Abedini has been detained since 2012 for trying to build a home church network in his native Iran. The White House said yesterday his unjust imprisonment is a priority for the president. For years, however, religious liberty advocates have criticized the administration for not doing enough to secure its release. Nagmed Abedini spoke with us earlier today about her meeting with the president in Idaho yesterday.
My son Jacob asked him if he could bring Daddy home for his birthday, which is in March, and I could see President Obama, his father's side, coming out and saying, you know what, Jacob, I will try.
Well, Jacob and that family certainly need our prayers. Head coach Bill Belichick says he is shocked that his New England Patriots are accused of using underinflated footballs in Sunday's AFC Championship game. The NFL is investigating the claim. Deflated footballs are generally easier to throw and catch. Belichick says he knew nothing of the issue until Monday morning. He says he'll make sure his team inflates footballs to the proper level. The lopsided Patriots win over the Colts sends them to the Super Bowl, playing the Seattle Seahawks a week from Sunday. Coming up, how does an abortionist become an outspoken pro-life advocate? We talk with a doctor who made that giant leap. And groups of young pro-lifers camp out at Catholic University's gym ahead of today's March for Life. Our precious gift coverage of the March for Life continues here on EWTN News Nightly for January 22nd, 2015. Pope Francis showing his support for the March for Life on Twitter, tweeting today the theme, Every Life is a Gift. That, of course, the theme for this March for Life today. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. So as pro-life Americans march for life here in Washington, today we look at Planned Parenthood's annual report released last month. That report shows more than 327,000 abortions were performed at Planned Parenthood affiliates in 2013. Planned Parenthood says almost 1 million cancer screening procedures and tests were conducted, and they say they made 1,880 adoption referrals. Planned Parenthood reports it distributed about 1.5 million emergency contraception kits. We're joined by Dr. Anthony Levatino, a former abortionist, and Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood director, both now outspoken pro-life advocates, very involved in the March for Life this year and in previous years. I want to ask both of you, starting with you, Abby, what led you to be part of the abortion industry?
You know, I think it was just vulnerability. I think it was a lack of knowledge, probably some naivety, just not knowing what Planned Parenthood was really about, believing the talking points, believing the rhetoric, and then, you know, also an abortion that I had in my past, trying to justify my own sin by working in the abortion industry and convincing other women to join me in that same sinking ship.
Tony, you were actually performing these abortions. Yes. What brought you to that place?
When I graduated from medical school in 1976, if you asked me how I felt about this entire issue, I've told you without hesitation I was pro-choice. You know, a lot of people identify themselves as pro-choice or pro-life, but to how many people does that really matter in terms of their lives or how they even vote?
It mattered to you.
It mattered to me a lot, because when you're a gynecologist and you say that, then it's up to you to actually do the procedure. So I learned to do first and second trimester abortions in my residency.
How did that reversal happen for you?
During the time in my residency, I met my wife, we married, and we wanted to have a family of our own. We found out that that was very difficult. We couldn't have a child of our own, or at least apparently so, and we were having a difficult time trying to adopt a child. That's when I had my first doubts about doing abortions, because here I'm trying to adopt a child, and here I am throwing them away at the same time. We were blessed and were able to adopt a child in 1978, and as sometimes happens, my wife got pregnant soon thereafter, like a month later, and we had 2 children 10 months apart. When my daughter was 2 months short of her 6th birthday in 1984, she was killed in an auto accident. And that changed everything, because anyone who's lost a child knows the tremendous pain involved. And then, you know, to me, doing abortion was pretty routine, but when you do an abortion, you have to keep inventory of all the pieces, make sure it's all there. And after doing the first late-term abortion after her death, it was just, it really struck home. I'm killing kids. I mean, I'm killing kids for money, and that was something I wasn't going to do.
Abby, we know you witnessed an abortion in the clinic, and that changed you. I know that you're helping people trying to leave that industry. Very quickly, how can we help with that?
Well, our ministry is called And Then There Were None. We are a comprehensive clinic worker outreach ministry. So far, we've helped 139 abortion clinic workers, from abortion clinic staff all the way up into abortion doctors, leave the industry and come to places of healing. And we're just really excited about what's happening. People can go to abortionworker.com. We have printable brochures. I mean, just anywhere you can promote us, we would really appreciate it.
Then there were none. Thank you both. Abby Johnson, Dr. Anthony Levatino, thank you for being with us and for being pro-life.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. The face of today's pro-life movement is young. Catherine Szeltner was at Washington's Verizon Center for this morning's youth rally and Mass for Life.
18,000 students are packed here into the stadium seats ahead of the March for Life. It's been an early morning for these students, but also a late night.
Don't let the buses fool you. This is no field trip. Students from across the nation pour into D.C. ahead of the March for Life. 41 people from the Diocese of Fargo, over 160 from Ave Maria University, and more than 300 from Benedictine College, all traveling over 1,000 miles each way. And it's not an easy journey.
Bus ride was kind of rough. I actually forgot my pillows. Like, the bus was just kind of struggle between like switching positions to sleep.
I slept maybe 5 minutes. I was up the rest of the night.
Many students crash here on the eve of the march at Catholic University of America's Athletic Center. The sports facility is transformed into a place of prayer. Praise and worship, adoration, and confession, all offered here for the night. But why come all this way to sleep on a gym floor?
I know last year I came, and when you're actually marching with all those people, it's all worth it. And I immediately forgot how tired I was and how little sleep I got, because it was this causes so much more than just sleeping or being comfortable for a day, or how bad my feet were gonna hurt.
And for those who have been fighting the pro-life battle for a few years now, the youth here are a sign of hope.
That the Holy Spirit is alive and moving hearts, and that there is a tremendous future for the pro-life movement.
So with these prayers and maybe a sugar fix, students are ready to march on.
We're at the Verizon
Worshipping
Center.
alongside thousands of other pro-lifers is definitely one way to wake up this morning. And this rally and Mass for Life is sure to have an impact here on the students. I was here a few years ago myself with Florida State's Catholic Student Union, and that was one of my most powerful memories. Reporting from the Verizon Center here in Washington, D.C., Catherine Szeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, Catherine, you fit right in there. Dr. Day Gardner is president of the National Black Pro-Life Union here in D.C. for the march. Are you encouraged by the enthusiasm and activism you're seeing from these young people?
I sure am. You know, it's wonderful because you see more and more students every single year. Busloads of them, college campuses, they all come together. They're excited, they're energized, and they help to energize all of us old folks out there.
Unfortunately, abortion is so much a part of our world culture. What certain groups are targeted by the abortion industry?
Definitely the African American community. I think that it's a travesty, and it's really devastating our community. It's gotten to the point where in inner cities, especially where the Planned Parenthood and the abortion facilities they set up camp there, where abortion is up to 50% in most cities, and in New York City, we just heard 60% of all abortions are performed on black women.
What impact has that had on the black community and black families especially?
You know, it's really devastating us. We are no longer producing large families. You know, I think that what the good part about it is that we also are realizing more and more, especially with modern 3 and 4D ultrasounds, modern technology, the internet has been very helpful getting information out there, that more and more blacks are coming and they're saying, how do I get involved? How do we work to save our children? And that's the good news. There was a time where we were working, one group here, one group there, all over the United States. Well, you know what? We've developed a web of black pro-life organizations. We have a much larger footprint, and we are all about saving the lives of as many children as possible and protecting our women.
Are we beginning to see a more diverse look to the March for Life?
I think so. As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, more and more Black. It's just wonderful to see that we all come together, as my dear friend, my sister Alveda King says all the time, that we are all members of the same race, the human race, and that's the most important thing.
She's our dear friend, too. Dr. Day Gardner, thanks for joining us from the National Black Pro-Life Union. Thanks for being pro-life.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. God bless.
God bless you. Up next, Chicago's March for Life broke a record last weekend. A pro-life veteran tells us what's being done for women in the Windy City. And Wyatt Goolsby looks at the history of the National March for Life here in Washington. Our Precious Gifts special coverage of the March for Life 2015 continues. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday evening, the 22nd of January. And the march has been taking place since 1974. What started out as a grassroots demonstration has grown into a massive national rally. Back to the Supreme Court, where Wyatt Goolsby has the march's history.
Brian, the supporters of the March for Life say the rally has come a long way. Compare the hundreds of thousands of people we saw today to just the few thousand at the very first march.
January 22, 1974, the first National March for Life was supposed to be a one-time event, a chance for pro-lifers to rally on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. But what started as a small demonstration has turned into the largest pro-life event in the world. Founder Nellie Gray feared Americans would forget about Roe v. Wade. That led to a second rally, a third, and so on. The March for Life became incorporated as a non-profit, and organizers came up with ways to advocate for the unborn.
Roe v. Wade is not the law of the land.
The March for Life has overcome lots of obstacles. Dolores Becker, one of the founding board members, says without the internet or even fax machines, getting the word out was a challenge.
It was like horse and buggy days in the beginning, because when we first put out our press release, Nellie handed them to me and said, "Here, go deliver these."
Inspired by their cause, they did get the message out. Over the years, supporters braved the elements to make their annual trip to the nation's capital. Church groups would bring students, friends, and families by the busloads.
These kids are really thinking about it, and they're not being very strong on it. You know, they're just telling them what they believe and what they think is happening. And the kids are really, I think the innocent ones are really taking it to heart.
And based on Facebook and Twitter, the number of young people involved is growing. The movement is also spreading worldwide. It's a trend Teresa Tomeo has been reporting on for years in both radio and television.
It's such a beautiful statement about the universal church and just how profound this is in terms of everyone coming together. And from this march, of course, you know that this has spawned a number of other marches, not just the Walk for Life West Coast, but there is now a march in Rome. There have been marches now in Chicago and other major cities.
While the original goal of overturning Roe v. Wade hasn't happened yet, standing up for the most vulnerable in society is still the focus to this day.
Over the years, being able to attract different faith groups from across the nation to support the March for Life has been a key factor in the event's dramatic growth. Brian?
All right, Wyatt, thank you. Over the years, being able to attract different faith groups, we have Mary Hallan FioRito coming from Chicago, the Archdiocese. You're involved with Aid for Women there. This is a pregnancy resource center, maternity home. When a woman says yes to life, or a couple says yes to life, what kind of help do they need?
Well, we find that women need any variety of resources available to them if they're going to make a choice in favor of life. Some women need medical care, some women need a place to live, some women need material support, and some women really just need somebody to hold their hand and walk through the pregnancy with them. They don't have a friend. They don't have one supportive person who can be there with them to deliver the baby, who can be there with them to answer questions. So at Aid for Women, we have what we call our toolkit, and we try to give women whatever it is they need to be able to make a free choice in favor of life.
And very simply, how can we reach out to people in this situation?
Well, crisis pregnancy centers are all over the country. They're not just limited to places like the Midwest or Chicago, though we think we have the best one in the Midwest at Aid for Women. You can simply Google pregnancy resource centers or crisis pregnancy centers, and you can support in any variety of ways. Certainly the material items are always very high on a pregnancy center's list.
And connect people with those.
Correct, right.
Refer them.
But if you're, say, a grandma and you can talk to an expectant mother on the phone 2 or 3 times a week and be that grandma for her.
Support.
just doing that is a huge thing. And then people who can pray for us, because we know that that makes the difference. That's the key to our success in anything that we do. And so if there's no other way you can give, you can certainly pray for us.
Mary Hallan, FioRito, thank you, and give our best to Cardinal George.
I certainly will.
Okay. I know you're a dear
Thank you
friend
for
of his.
asking. Thank you. I certainly will. Thank you,
All right.
Brian.
Thank you. Well, until tomorrow, you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch on YouTube anytime you like. For all of us at EWTN News Nightly, our entire team did a great job today. I'm Brian Patrick, and we end tonight revisiting highlights from today's National March for Life themed Every Life is a Gift. Good night, and God bless you.